Have you ever felt your heart crack, like a glass dropped on a hardwood floor, shattering so softly you didn't know pain could be that quiet? I have. My name is Evelyn Harper, and I was 32 years old in the spring of 1978, living in a modest brick house on Maple Street in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, when my world broke apart. I'm 79 now, sitting here in 2025, telling you this because I need you to understand what it's like to carry a grief that never leaves, a love that never fades, and a life that keeps moving forward even when you're pleading for it to stop. If you're watching this, hold on, because this story isn't just mine, it's yours too. Hidden in the corners of your heart where you keep your deepest hurts. And if you feel something while I'm talking, leave a comment below. Tell me where you're watching from, because I want to know I'm not alone in this. Back in 1978, I thought I knew what life was supposed to be. I was young, or at least I felt young, with quick hands and a laugh that could fill a room. My husband Daniel was the center of my universe. He had a crooked smile, shy but warm, like he was always holding a secret just for me. When he came home from the steel mill, his hands smudged with grease, he'd wrap his arms around me and spin me around our tiny kitchen, like we were still teenagers stealing kisses at the Lancaster County Fair. We'd been married 10 years, since I was 22 in 1968, and we'd built a life in that house with its creaky oak floors, chipped yellow paint, and a front porch where we'd sit on Sunday afternoons, sipping lemonade and watching the world go by. The kitchen smelled of coffee and cinnamon rolls, and every evening, Daniel would tell me stories from the mill, his voice low and steady, making me laugh until my sides ached. We had a daughter, Clara, our miracle, born in 1972 with eyes like her father's and a giggle that could charm the grumpiest neighbor. She was 6 years old when everything changed. It started with a cough, so small you'd barely notice it. Daniel waved it off, said it was just the dust from the mill. But by the fall of 1977, he was different. He'd drag himself home, his face gray, his shoulders slumped like he was carrying a weight I couldn't see. I nagged him until he agreed to see a doctor, and we sat in a sterile office on Walnut Street, holding hands, waiting for answers. When the doctor said lung cancer, stage 4, it felt like the air was sucked out of the room. His voice was calm, but the words hit like a sledgehammer. 6 months, maybe less, he said. Daniel squeezed my hand, but I couldn't feel it. All I could feel was a hollow panic clawing at my chest, a fear that wrapped around my heart and wouldn't let go. We fought it with everything we had: chemotherapy, radiation, every prayer I could muster in the pews of our little Lutheran church on Chestnut Street. I'd kneel there, my hands clasped so tight my knuckles turned white, begging God to give us more time. But cancer doesn't care about love or prayers. By March 1978, Daniel was gone. I was there, holding his hand in the hospital, watching his chest rise and fall until it stopped. The silence that followed was louder than anything I'd ever heard, a quiet that screamed in my ears. I was 32, a widow, and Clara was all I had left. Nights were unbearable. I'd sit by Clara's bed, watching her sleep under the quilt I'd made her, pale blue with tiny yellow stars. Her soft breaths were the only sound that kept me grounded, but I'd cry silently, my tears soaking my sleeve, terrified of waking her. She needed me to be strong, but every morning the grief came back, sharp and relentless, like a knife that never dulled. I was a seamstress, working out of our dining room, stitching dresses and hemming pants for neighbors. My hands were always busy, threading needles, pinning fabric, anything to keep my mind from unraveling. I had to keep going for Clara. She was my light, my reason. She'd come home from kindergarten, her pigtails bouncing, chattering about the caterpillars she saw in the school garden or the picture she drew of us holding hands under a big, crayon blue sky. I'd smile, kiss her forehead, and tell her I loved her. But inside, I was screaming. How was I supposed to raise her alone? How was I supposed to be enough when half of me was gone? By the summer of 1978, Clara was 6.5, a whirlwind of energy, always begging to play outside. Maple Street was quiet, lined with tall maple trees and modest houses. The kind of place where kids rode bikes until the streetlights flickered on. I'd started letting her play in the front yard, where I could see her from the dining room window while I worked. She'd chase butterflies, draw chalk pictures on the driveway, or sing made-up songs. Her laughter floating through the screen door like a melody I clung to. It was the only sound that could pierce the fog in my heart. I'd glance up every few minutes, making sure she was safe, her pigtails bouncing as she skipped across the grass. August 12th, 1978, was a Saturday, hot and sticky, the air so thick it clung to your skin. Clara was outside, playing hopscotch on the driveway, her chalk leaving bright pink and blue lines on the concrete. I was at my sewing machine, working on a neighbor's wedding dress. The white satin spilling over the table like a promise I no longer believed in. I told Clara to stay close, not to go past the mailbox. She promised, her voice so serious, her big eyes wide with sincerity. I believed her. I always believed her. I didn't hear the motorcycle at first. It was a low rumble, like a storm brewing far off. I was focused on a tricky seam, my foot on the pedal when the sound grew louder, closer, insistent. I looked up, and through the window, I saw Clara standing at the edge of the driveway, her chalk in her hand, staring at the street. I don't know why she stepped forward. Maybe she saw a stray cat. Maybe a shiny stone caught her eye. Or maybe she just forgot my warning. But I saw the blur of a motorcycle, black and chrome, speeding down Maple Street. The rider, a young man with long hair, was leaning into the turn, oblivious. I saw Clara take one step too far. I was out the door before I knew it, screaming her name, my voice raw and desperate, tearing through the humid air. But it was too late. The bike swerved, but not enough. The sound of metal hitting pavement, the screech of tires, it's burned into my skull. A sound I hear in my nightmares even now. Clara was on the ground, so small, so still, her chalk rolling into the grass. I ran to her, my knees slamming into the asphalt, my hands shaking as I touched her face. Her eyes were closed, her little chest not moving. I screamed for help, screamed until my throat burned, my voice breaking into sobs. Neighbors came running. Someone called an ambulance, but I knew she was gone. My baby was gone. The smallest coffins are the heaviest, and hers was a weight I'd carry forever. The police arrived, then the ambulance, their lights flashing red and blue against the dusk. They said it was an accident, that the rider was part of a local motorcycle club. Just a kid, barely 20, who didn't see her in time. He sat on the curb, head in his hands, crying, saying he was sorry over and over. His words were meaningless, just noise drowning in the roar of my grief. They took Clara away, and I stood there, staring at the chalk lines on the driveway. Her hopscotch grid unfinished, a half-drawn heart smudged by tire marks. I don't remember much after that, just fragments. Signing papers, calling my sister in Harrisburg, sitting in the dark with a glass of water I couldn't drink. The funeral was 3 days later, at the same Lutheran church where we'd buried Daniel 5 months earlier. Clara's casket was white, adorned with pink roses, so small it looked like a cruel joke. I wanted to carry it myself, to hold her one last time, but it felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. The smallest coffins are the heaviest, and that truth crushed me. My arms weren't strong enough. Nothing was. I filed a complaint, demanded justice, but what does justice mean when your child is gone? The writer got community service, a suspended license, a slap on the wrists that couldn't touch the hole in my chest. The case was closed in a month, but for me, it never ended. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her stepping into the street. Every time I walked past the driveway, I saw her chalk lines, faded by rain but never gone. I'd lie awake at night, replaying that moment, torturing myself with what if I'd looked up sooner, if I'd run faster, if I'd held her tighter. The guilt was a living thing, clawing at me, whispering that I'd failed her, failed Daniel, failed everything. I didn't leave Lancaster. I couldn't. That house, that street, it was all I had left of them. But living there was like walking through a graveyard. The silence was too loud, the memories too sharp. I stopped sewing for months. My hands shook too much to hold a needle. I'd sit on the porch, staring at the spot where Clara fell, the chalk lines now just a shadow in my mind. Neighbors brought casseroles, left notes, whispered kind words, but their compassion couldn't touch the emptiness. I'd see kids riding bikes, hear their laughter, and it was like a knife twisting in my chest. How could the world keep turning when mine had stopped? The smallest coffins are the heaviest, and I felt that weight in every breath. But Clara's laugh, her bright eyes, they were still inside me, pushing me to keep breathing. In the spring of 1979, I found a way to survive, though I didn't know it at the time. I started volunteering at a preschool on Chestnut Street, a few blocks from home. People asked me how I could do it, how I could spend my days with children who reminded me of Clara, who brought her face back every time they smiled. The truth is, I didn't know if I could. The first day I walked into that classroom, I nearly turned back. The sight of those little faces, their tiny hands clutching crayons, it was like seeing Clara everywhere. The pain was so sharp I could barely breathe, but something kept me there. Maybe it was her laugh echoing in my memory, or the way I felt her love in every child's giggle. I didn't run from the pain. I stepped into it because it was the only way I could keep her close. I read them stories, helped them tie their shoes, wiped their tears when they fell. Every smile, every clumsy hug, it was like holding her again. It hurt, a deep, aching hurt, but it also kept me alive. I'd watch them play, their laughter filling the room, and for a moment, I could pretend she was there, just out of sight, waiting to run into my arms. The smallest coffins are the heaviest, but in those moments, I found a way to carry mine. There was one little girl, Sarah, who caught my heart. She was 4, shy, always clutching a stuffed rabbit with one floppy ear. She had Clara's sparked not the same eyes, but the same light, the kind that made you believe in hope even when you'd forgotten what it felt like. One day, she tugged my sleeve and asked me to braid her hair. As I wove her soft curls, my hands remembered Clara's pigtails, the way she'd squirm and giggle. I had to bite my lip to keep from crying, but I kept braiding, and when Sarah turned and smiled at me, it was like a tiny piece of my heart stitched itself back together. Not healed, never healed, but held together just enough to keep going. Sarah's mother, Ellen, became a friend, someone who'd sit with me over coffee and listen without pushing me to talk. She'd lost her brother in a car accident years before, and though she never said it outright, I knew she understood the weight of loss. We'd sit on her porch watching Sarah play, and I'd feel a flicker of peace, like Clara was there with us. Smiling, I volunteered at that preschool for years, watching kids grow, their small victories becoming mine. There was Tommy, a boy with a gap-toothed grin who loved drawing stars. He'd give me his pictures, saying they'd keep me safe at night. I kept every one, tucked in a shoebox with Clara's drawing stick figures under rainbows, lopsided hearts, a butterfly she'd colored bright green. There was Lily, who'd sing off-key, but so loud it made everyone laugh, her joy a balm for my wounds. Each child was a thread, weaving a fragile net that kept me from falling too far. But every night, I'd go home to that quiet house, sit in Clara's room untouched since that summer. Her teddy bear still on the pillow end, the weight of that tiny casket would press down again. The smallest coffins are the heaviest, and I felt it in every bone. I'd talk to her, to Daniel, whispering apologies, telling them I loved them, promising I'd never forget. I'd pull out Clara's drawings and trace the lines with my finger, trying to feel her through the paper. In 1985, the preschool closed, and I moved to a daycare on Duke Street. I was 40 by then, my hair starting to gray, my hands still steady but my heart heavier. The daycare was louder, busier, with kids from 2 to 6, their energy both exhausting and life-saving. I'd organize games, bandage scraped knees, teach them to count by clapping. One day, a boy named Michael, barely 3, climbed into my lap and fell asleep, his tiny hand curled around my finger. I sat there, frozen, remembering how Clara used to do the same. I didn't cry, not in front of him, but when I got home, I sobbed until I couldn't breathe. Moments like that were both a gift and a wound, reminding me of what I'd lost, but also what I could still give. The smallest coffins are the heaviest, but those moments gave me the strength to keep carrying mine. In 1988, I started sewing again, taking small jobs to make ends meet. I'd sit at my old Singer machine, the hum of it steadying my hands, and think of Clara, how she'd loved watching me work, asking if she could make a dress for her doll. I made one, after she was given a tiny dress from scraps of blue cotton, the kind she loved. I keep it in her room, folded in a drawer, because throwing it away would be like throwing away a piece of her. Sewing became my therapy, each stitch a way to hold myself together. I'd make quilts for the daycare kids, bright patches of color that made them smile, and in every one, I'd hide a tiny heart. A secret for Clara, there was a moment in 1990 that nearly broke me. I was 45, walking home from the daycare, past a park on Orange Street where kids were playing tag. I saw a girl who looked so much like Clara's same pigtails, same skip in her step that I froze. My heart pounded, and for a second, I believed it was her that the last 12 years had been a nightmare I could wake from. I stood there, watching her chase a friend, her laughter cutting through me like glass. Her mother called her name, not Clarand. The spell broke. I went home and cried for hours, the kind of sobbing that leaves you hollow. But the next day, I went back to the daycare because those kids needed me and I needed them. I needed their laughter, their sticky fingers, their trust. It was my way of keeping Clara alive, of keeping Daniel's love alive. The smallest coffins are the heaviest, but their love was heavier still, anchoring me to life. In 1995, I started a new chapter. I was 50, and the daycare director asked me to lead a storytelling program. I'd always loved reading to the kids, and now I was writing stories too. Simple tales about brave rabbits or stars that sang. The kids would sit cross-legged, eyes wide, as I spun worlds for them, I'd weave bits of Clara into every story: a girl with pigtails, a laugh like bells, a love for butterflies. It was my way of keeping her close, of letting her live in the imaginations of others. Parents started asking for my stories, so I'd type them up on an old typewriter, handing out smudged copies. One mother, Jane, said my stories helped her son sleep after his father left. That meant more to me than any paycheck. I'd sit at home, writing late into the night, pouring my heart into those pages, each word a way to carry Clara's light. By 2005, I was 60, and I retired from the daycare but kept volunteering, helping with story time at the Lancaster Public Library or knitting blankets for the church's charity drive. People in town started calling me Miss Evelyn, the lady with the sad eyes and the warm smile. They didn't know my whole story, but they'd pat my hand, share their own Lucissa spouse. A parent, a dream, and I'd listen because I knew what it was to carry grief. The smallest coffins are the heaviest, and I saw that weight in their eyes too. I'd walk home, past the park, past the driveway, and feel the ache of Clara's absence, but also the warmth of the kids' hugs, the stories, the quilts.
They were my threads, holding me together. In 2010, something unexpected happened. Tommy, the boy who drew stars, came back to Lancaster. He was 30, a teacher now. With a wife and a baby on the way, he found me at the library, handed me a drawing a star, just like the ones he used to make. He said I'd been his favorite person at the daycare, that my kindness helped him through his parents' divorce. I cried right there in the library, not caring who saw. Tommy's visit reminded me that love leaves echoes even when you think it's gone. I started writing more, not just for kids but for myself, filling notebooks with memories of Daniel and Clara, the good and the bad, the moments that broke me and the ones that saved me. I wrote about the summer we took Clara to the county fair, how she squealed on the carousel, her tiny hand in mine. I wrote about Daniel teaching her to catch fireflies, their laughter lighting up the backyard. Those memories were painful, but they were also my treasure, proof that they'd lived, that they'd loved me. In 2015, I faced another challenge. I was 70 and my health started faltering, arthritis in my hands, a heart murmur that made the doctor frown. I slowed down, but I didn't stop. I started a knitting group at the church, teaching young mothers and grandmothers to make blankets for the hospital's neonatal unit. Each stitch was a prayer, not just for the babies, but for Clara, for Daniel, for me. One woman, Maria, joined the group after losing her son to leukemia. We didn't talk much about our losses, but we understood each other. We'd knit in silence, the click of needles like a heartbeat, and I'd feel Clara's presence in every loop. The smallest coffins are the heaviest, but sharing that weight with others made it bearable now. In 2025, I'm 70, and I've learned something about grief. It doesn't get smaller, you just get stronger at carrying it. The smallest coffins are the heaviest, but love is heavier still, and it's what keeps me going. I still live in that house on Maple Street, though the paint's peeling worse than ever and the neighborhood's changed. The maple trees are taller. The kids who ride bikes now are the grandkids of the ones I knew. I walk past the driveway every day and I can still see Clara's chalk lines in my mind. Still hear her laugh on the breeze. I've never stopped missing her, never stopped missing Daniel. But I've learned to live with the ache, to let it be part of me. I think about the people who've crossed my path, the ones who've left marks on my heart. Mrs. Thompson, the neighbor who brought me soup every week after Clara died, never asking questions, just sitting with me in silence. Ellen, Sarah's mother, who'd share her own grief over coffee, helping me feel less alone. Tommy, with his stars and his kindness. Jane, who said my stories gave her son peace. Maria, whose quiet strength mirrored my own. These connections, these tiny threads, they've kept me stitched together. And I wonder about you watching this. What's your thread? What's the thing that keeps you going when the world feels too heavy? Maybe it's a memory, a person, a moment that lights up the dark. Whatever it is, hold on to it, because it's stronger than you think. If you're still here, you've probably felt lost too. Maybe it's a child, a partner, a dream you buried long ago. I see you, and I know it hurts. I know the nights when you lie awake, replaying what you could have done differently. I know the days when you smile for the world but cry when you're alone. But I also know this. Love doesn't die even when the person does. Clara's love, Daniel's love, it's still here, in every stitch I sewed. Every story I told, every child I hugged, every breath I take. It echoes through the years, through the kids I helped, the stories I wrote, the blankets I knit. Love leaves echoes, and those echoes carry us forward. The smallest coffins are the heaviest, but they're also the ones that teach us how to love harder, deeper, forever. So tell me, where are you watching from? What's your story? Leave it in the comments because I want to hear it. I want to know I'm not alone, and I want you to know you're not either. We're all carrying something. Some weights heavier than others, but we're still here, still fighting. And as long as we're breathing, we're keeping their light alive. For me, it's Clara's giggle, Daniel's crooked smile, the way they made me feel whole. For you, it's whatever makes your heart ache and sing at the same time. Hold on to it. Never let it go.